Hi, in this presentation I'm going to hopefully help you develop a lesson plan for your athletic training lesson presentation. Regardless of the teaching method that you'll use, you'll still need to provide a lesson plan. I hope that this lesson plan guide and the lesson plan template that you can find in our course will be beneficial to you. So I say that have those out in front of you while I'm going over this presentation. The lesson plan guide provides you detailed information on each one of the different sections, and the template is just a template. I'll show you it. So it just provides you the blanks there, and you have to fill in the blanks. So my goal in this presentation is to go over each one of these sections. I think it's helpful to go back to the Fink's document, a self-directed guide to designing courses for significant learning, to help you build your lesson from your class. Because realize this lesson is going to be just one part of a class, and then use this information from Fink's guide to help you develop all these different things, learning guide, feedback, all those type of things that's stated there. But specifically for your lesson plan, what you need to include is the situational factors. So go back and reread the information from the Fink guide. I'm not going to go over in detail, but what you may need to do is make up some of this information. Use your athletic training program. No reason to recreate the wheel. But think about in what class would your lesson be part of. If you're doing if your learning environment is a clinical environment, where in the program will it be at? How long should this lesson be? Is it a one day lesson? Is one day meaning one class, I should say, is probably a better term. One class session, a 60-minute class section? Is it a 90-minute lab? What's the clinical setting going to be? Is it a 1 day, 2 day impromptu clinical setting? So as much detail as you can provide here about the situational factors for your lesson, the better. And make sure I said it. Identify the class that your lesson will be a part of. Maybe a bit difficult with a lab, with a clinical setting, but where in a program do you think a student needs to be in order to do your clinical lesson? What kind of materials, equipment, or technology do you need to do this lesson? Be specific there. Actually, in this whole lesson plan, I want you to be very specific. Another teacher or another preceptor should be able to use this lesson and be able to teach the lesson by just using this your template, your lesson guide. That's the whole point of a lesson guide, is that it keeps you on track with your lesson to meet the objectives of your lesson. As I said earlier, will this lesson be in a classroom, lab, or clinical setting? What's the length of the lesson? Is it 1 day, 2 day, week long? Those type of things. Do provide the teaching method and the topic used for this lesson. And for number 5, what preparatory information do the students need before they do the lesson? Do they have to have certain clothing requirements? Do they need to read a certain chapter in a book, review some videos, whatever they need to be prepared to be successful in that lesson? Stated there. You don't have to do title next. I'm just put these in order. What's your title for your lesson? Provide an interesting title for it. Doesn't have to be long. Make it catchy, but it doesn't have to be a long title. your introduction. How you gonna get the students' attention? How are you gonna get them hooked into the topic? Are you going to use a video, story, poll question? There's a lot of different ways. You can do some research on that. How do you want to spark the interest of the student? How can you find out the student's previous knowledge or understanding of the topic or their misconceptions about the topic? Bain talks quite a bit about that it's hard to unlearn material. So another thing we know from the educational learning theories is that we want to connect new learning to old learning. So it's good to know what they already know and connect it to your new material to the old material. Again, provide a length of time that you expect to spend on an introduction. Is that a 3-minute introduction? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? How much time you plan to spend on your intro? Again, your intros be as detailed as you can to help another person who can teach your lesson for you. As we know, our student learning outcomes, or SLOs, should drive the lesson. I had you pick a content area from our athletic training educational competencies. Then from the content area, what expected outcome will be taught. And so what you need to do is take that educational expected outcome and turn that into an SLO. Now, a lot of the expected outcomes are very long and detailed. What I recommend and suggest is that you narrow down your topic to one specific area. If your topic talks about doing an injury evaluation or assessment, and it lists upper body, lower body, neck, spine, blah, 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 just pick one upper body, for example, and the shoulder. So write it for the shoulder assessment. Be very specific. I want your SLO to follow a certain pattern. You want to start your SLO with the phrase the student will be able to, and then I've provided this information before in the Learning Goals Part 2 lecture back on week 3. I'll go over it again. In your SLO, you need to provide these 3 main areas: the behavior, the condition, and the criterion. The behavior is what do you expect from the students? I want you to use verbs to describe the thing that students will do. I've provided you some verbs from Bloom's or Fink's taxonomy in the class. The condition is what will the setting that the students will exhibit upon assessment, i.e., for example, a practical exam. And what is the criterion is what's the expected level of performance to determine proficiency. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So this is actually a SLO from our class. This is a course student learning objective. And the student will be able to develop, that's the verb, of application, analysis, or synthesis from Fink, strategies that synthesize current athletic training and higher education literature on learning theory and motivation in order to actively engage all learners and produce optimal learning, that's the behavior, with a score of 80% or greater, that's the criteria for mastery, on the athletic training lesson presentation assignment. So I have the 3 main areas in red. Then I put the areas in red after I've described it. So I've got the behavior, the condition, and the criterion in my student learning outcome. That's the student learning outcome or objective. There's both ways. I say it both ways. SLOs should drive our lesson. We should develop this first and then base everything else off that, which we talked about in week 3. So you develop that. I want you to provide one SLO for your lesson on your selected outcome, content area, and expected outcome. Then from there is your lesson sequence. Provide a very detailed lesson information using the teaching method that you selected in the beginning of class. So when I'm assessing this, what I'll look at it at your lesson sequence is a couple different things. But one, did you use the teaching method that you stated and you explained in your presentation? Did you correctly use the lesson or that teaching method in your lesson? Was it sequenced correctly? Was it appropriate to meet the learning objective, the stated learning objective in your lesson plan? Did you have enough time? Because I say include time elements. How long should you include for the different parts of your lesson? Did you include your introduction, SLO, the main lesson, conclusions, assessment in your sequence? So provide very detailed information here in your lesson sequence. Think about your lesson plan as a rehab plan. When we do a rehab plan, we have specific goals that we expect our patients to meet for long and short term and for our daily rehab. And that's what this lesson plan is about. It's our plan for us to be successful in teaching the students about a specific topic. And then the lesson sequence or that activities, those engaging activities using a specific teaching method to meet the specific student learning objective. How will you wrap up your lesson? How will you summarize the key points, check for learning, do assign homework, so any of those classroom experiences? Again, give time elements here. And then the last section, how will you assess that the students have actually satisfied or met the SLO based on your criterion? How am I going to determine that you have a score of 80% or greater? That's the criteria for mastery on the particular assignment. Well, I'll read or listen to your presentation and use a rubric to assess that. So how will you assess it? There are multiple different ways to do assessment. I have a presentation on that in class. Will this be a formal or informal assessment? Will this be a formative or summative assessment? Again, I talk about that in another presentation. I think it's in a week or two. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but you do need to address how you'll assess the student's mastery of the SLO. You don't necessarily for this assignment have to develop a rubric. You just have to explain how you're going to do that. You don't have to develop a test, but if you're going to use a test, just explain that you use a test. If it's a hands-on like clinical thing, you'll observe them doing let's say they're doing Lockmans, you'll observe them doing Lockmans, those type of things. So how will you assess that they have actually satisfied the lesson student learning objectives? As always, if you have questions about your assignment, please ask. Start in the Q&A forum, but if we need to sit down and talk some more, I'm really here to help.